gonna go over what I think about the Fabry start, and we're gonna start right. Okay, so first I wanna go off right away and say that this should not be called the Fabry start, and I would argue it should be called the Stipe Zunic start or the Tom Walsh start. Where I want to go with this is that I've been thinking through what is my opinion. You know, Jeff Klein, who's one of our athletes, has been trying this. My son had played around with the cyclone technique for a while as well, and I believe that that's sort of similar to this, and now Krauser's getting into almost a Krauser slide Fabry start, and I wanted to provide an analysis around my thoughts and then even get into a little bit deeper what I think you should be doing if you want to play around with this or not. That was a really good throw from Loveland. She's just ripping bombs. That was good. When we're looking at, first off, we have to think about what is the point of changing a start, okay? So what is like the actual physical point? And that has to be the big question here, because if we ask an athlete, right? If we ask a coach, why are you doing this? And they can't really come back to you with a reason, then you probably shouldn't do it. And I think that's one big factor is like, why would you change your starting position from, let's say, a traditional start here to either a start here, which would be more like Stipe and Tom, they would be a little bit more over there, or from here to all the way this way, okay? And my analysis of that first factor is that I've had conversations with Christoph Kipp about this. I've even had Instagram conversations with him talking about angular momentum. And if we look at the purpose would be that we could increase angular momentum from that right side, so much so that when we would ground in the middle, when our right would be grounded, we would have more tension and more speed, and then in turn, more angular momentum. Could go a little wider on the right. If the left cut a little bit more, left and then cut a little more. So the first answer would be, okay, I want to do the Fabry start or the Stipe start. Stipe start's a little cooler, so maybe we should try and push that. And then the Krauser slider with the Fabry twist, you know, whatever we want to call it. But the reason being, I want to increase angular momentum. Okay, so that would be the first level. So then the second level, that was okay, a little wider to me. Then the second level would be that you are able to then hold the tension and the speed in a stable scenario from that Fabry start, Stipe start, whatever, from that extra angular momentum that you are theoretically trying to achieve. You're theoretically trying to do this. And if you are theoretically trying to do it, you also believe that once you achieve greater angular momentum around that non-dominant side, you would then be able to hold the position, have control at higher speeds, and then in turn lead to a bigger throw. Now this stems from a question somebody posed to us on Instagram is, do I think Jeff is throwing farther with the Stipe start versus his traditional throw? I would say this. He's throwing farther right now in training than he was 8 weeks ago. But is he throwing farther because of the Stipe start, or is he throwing farther because he's getting more reps with the Stipe start? So then we have to differentiate that. That was all right. That's pretty good. So that's sort of that second layer, is that if you want to achieve higher angular momentum, can you achieve it? And then can you control it, right? So that's the second layer of this whole equation, this whole discussion. And then the third layer comes into play when we're thinking through, like, should we make a technical change or not? We start to look through this. Oh, that was pretty good. That was good. Now longer left arm. So the next thing, the third aspect would be, if we want more angular momentum and we acknowledge that we can hold that tension and speed, because now we have a faster moving right side, we're grounding here, we're holding that tension. Now the next thing that we have to look at is, if it takes us, let's say, 5,000 reps to achieve a further throw, you know, just throwing out an arbitrary number, how many reps, how many throws will it take to achieve a greater distance than if you would have gotten those same 5,000 throws with your traditional throw? Okay, and I hope that makes sense. So there's 3 layers here. And I think that once we look through those 3 layers, I would make the argument personally that in most cases, I don't think that it makes sense to change your movement pattern. I think you have to analyze the position of the athlete's career. I think you have to analyze their consistency with their current throw. I think you have to analyze the temperament of the athlete. How well do they understand technique is another factor. That's where it's still like a little short and you're forward into the right early. And then finally, once we go through that, we also have to start to play around with things like, where are they at in their career? Are they later in their career? And that's where I want to bring up someone like Krauser. I would make the argument in Krauser's case that had he just stuck with a traditional start, okay, or maybe adding a slide, but I would even argue that traditional start. I would argue if he would have just kept doing that, he still would throw 2350 to 24 meters. I actually believe that. Now, what's absolutely awesome is that he's willing to try the slide, or he's willing to do the stipe start with the slide. And so we are able to see from the greatest athlete in our sport of all time, him playing around and what ends up happening. And to me, the answer is really lying in the fact that Krauser is so stable with his movement patterns. He's so dialed in on what he needs to do that he can sort of tweak things here and there. And maybe one of them does pop off for him, and it does indeed lead to maybe a greater increase on his trajectory than we otherwise would see at that level. Okay, so I think that's like the other thing is like really it comes down to, will there be a jump off that sort of gets you out of the typical trajectory pathway that you tend to see with just getting lots of reps in. But when you got to look at it, it still goes back to those three big factors. Why are you doing it? Are you able to actually hold those positions at higher speeds? And then the third thing is, how many reps will it take to overtake if you did all of those same reps with your traditional throw? And I want to just bring this up. Yo, that was pretty good. That looked really good. I want to bring up one final point here is that if we look at someone like Krauser, right, he tends to stay on this non-dominant side. The best spinners in the world are loaded on the left. They turn their hips here before pickup, okay? They don't pick up here. They turn just enough to get more weight onto that left. Throwing some reverses now, Loveland. And if we understand that, that tells us that no matter what, we could do a traditional start, we could do a slide, we could do the stipe start, we could do the stipe slide. No matter what, the angular momentum will only be increased if we're pivoting here. If we're picking up and my hips are staying this way, okay? So let's pretend here I'm picking up like this and my foot isn't rotating. Now I'm picking up like this and my center of mass is falling into the circle and I'm decreasing the sweep length, which will decrease my angular momentum. So we have to understand that concept and go back to those three big questions to try and resolve this and figure out, should we do this or should we not do this? And I hope I've helped somebody figure out that you probably should just stay with the Krauser start, or the traditional start, the Krauser slide. Stay in that realm for now. Fabry's an absolute freak of nature. He's going to throw far, just like Stipe. Stipe got third at the World Championships in 2017, a huge accomplishment, and he had that start. Tom Walsh, Olympic bronze medalist, multiple times world champion. It works, but I think you need to do it a little bit earlier in your career, and I also think you have to understand that big key point of rotating around that non-dominant leg. If you guys need help with your programming, head over to throwsuniversity.com. You can pick up a technical analysis, or you can sign up for custom programming from Coach Sam Weeks. Until next time, peace.